After a decade of loyalty, I was fired in front of everyone, blamed for failures that weren't mine. I thought my career was over, my life in ruins. But then I stumbled upon something I wasn't meant to see: secret emails buried deep in the company server. What I discovered changed everything. The CEO's perfect facade was built on lies, corruption, and destroyed careers. That's when I decided, if they wanted to play dirty, I'd show them what real revenge looked like. This is how I brought down the untouchable man who tried to destroy me. My name is Emily Carter. And for 10 years, I gave everything to Blue Haven Dynamics. I started at 24. Fresh out of college with a computer science degree and student loans that felt like a mortgage. Back then, I was just another entry-level developer in a sea of eager faces, debugging code in a cramped cubicle on the third floor of our Denver office tower. The early days were brutal. 60-hour weeks were the norm, not the exception. I survived on vending machine coffee and takeout containers that piled up on my desk like monuments to ambition. While my college friends were out exploring Colorado's nightlife, I was pulling all-nighters to meet impossible deadlines. My apartment, a studio in Capitol Hill, became just a place to shower and grab 4 hours of sleep before rushing back to the office. But I was good at what I did. Really good. Within 3 years, I'd moved from junior developer to senior developer. By year 5, I was leading small teams. And by year 8, I'd earned my position as project team lead for the Enterprise Solutions division, managing a team of 12 developers and overseeing projects worth millions. Blue Haven Dynamics wasn't just any tech company. With its gleaming 40-story headquarters in downtown Denver, it was the kind of place that made your parents proud when you told them where you worked. The lobby alone, all marble and chrome with a 3-story waterfall, screamed success. We had clients ranging from Fortune 500 companies to government contracts. The company prided itself on being where innovation meets integrity. Or at least, that's what the mission statement claimed. I believed in that mission. God, I was naive. Every morning, I'd arrive at 7 a.m. sharp, badge in at security, and take the express elevator to the 32nd floor. My team respected me, not because I was harsh, but because I never asked them to do anything I wouldn't do myself. When we had to work weekends, I was there with boxes of donuts. When someone needed to leave early for their kid's recital, I covered for them without question. The sacrifices seemed worth it. Each performance review came with glowing feedback. Exceptional dedication, natural leadership, invaluable to the team. The raises were modest but steady. I wasn't getting rich, but I was building something: a career, a reputation, a future. I'd given up so much for this place. Relationships crumbled because I prioritized project deadlines over dinner dates. I missed my sister's wedding rehearsal dinner because of an emergency client presentation. My social life consisted of occasional happy hours with coworkers, where we'd complain about impossible deadlines while still checking our phones for urgent emails. The stress manifested in ways I tried to ignore: the constant headaches, the anxiety that made my chest tight every Sunday night, the prescription bottle of sleeping pills that had become as essential as my laptop. But I told myself this was temporary, that once I proved myself, things would get easier. 3 months ago, everything started to change. Richard Harlow, our CEO, began taking a sudden interest in our division. At first, I was flattered. Here was the man whose face graced the cover of Tech Innovator Monthly, sitting in on our meetings, asking about our processes. He'd lean back in his Italian leather chair, his silver hair perfectly styled, those cold blue eyes scanning every presentation slide like he was looking for weakness. The KPIs started shifting weekly. Targets that had been reasonable became impossible. Documentation requirements tripled. Suddenly, nothing we did was good enough. Richard would publicly praise other divisions while picking apart our work in front of the entire leadership team. The pressure was crushing my team's morale, and I spent more time in damage control than actual development. Last week, I'd worked 72 hours straight to deliver a critical update for our biggest client. My hands were shaking from caffeine overdose as I submitted the final code review. I thought we'd finally proven ourselves. I was wrong. this morning. When I saw the HR meeting invitation pop up in my calendar, scheduled for 2 p.m., marked urgent, my stomach dropped. You don't get called to urgent HR meetings for promotions. As I walked through the maze of cubicles toward the conference room, I caught glimpses of my co-workers' faces. Some wouldn't meet my eyes. Others offered weak, sympathetic smiles. 10 years. 10 years of my life poured into this company, and I could feel it all about to shatter. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I approached the conference room, each step heavier than the last. Through the glass walls, I could see Janet from HR shuffling papers, her face carefully neutral. I paused at the door, my hand trembling slightly as I reached for the handle. Whatever was waiting for me in that room, I knew my life at Blue Haven Dynamics, the only professional life I'd ever known, was about to end. The conference room was Arctic cold, the air conditioning set to that aggressive level that only corporate offices seem to achieve. Janet from HR sat across from me, her manicured nails clicking against her tablet. Beside her sat Richard Harlow himself, immaculate in his $3,000 suit, and my direct supervisor, Marcus, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Emily," Richard began, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "I'm afraid we need to discuss your performance on the Morrison Industries project." The Morrison project? We'd delivered it on time. Under budget, with the client singing our praises just last week. My confusion must have shown because Richard's lips curved into what might have been a smile on anyone else's face. On him, it looked predatory. "The client may be satisfied," he continued, spreading out printed reports like playing cards. "But the internal metrics tell a different story. Efficiency down 30%, resource allocation exceeded by 22%, team productivity scores in the bottom quartile." "That's impossible," I heard myself say. "Those numbers, we track everything meticulously. Our burn rate was actually 15% under." "Are you calling me a liar, Emily?" Richard's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the room. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Janet's clicking intensified. "No, sir, I'm just saying there must be some mistake in the data." "The only mistake," Richard stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced precision, "was my assumption that you could handle the responsibilities of a team lead. Your consistent failure to meet evolving corporate standards has cost this company valuable opportunities." The room spun slightly. 10 years of perfect reviews, and suddenly I was a failure? "Furthermore," he continued, now pacing like a prosecutor in court, "your resistance to new methodologies and inability to adapt to dynamic market demands have created a toxic environment for your team." "Toxic?" The word escaped before I could stop it. "My team has filed numerous complaints," Janet interjected, sliding a folder across the table. I opened it to find anonymous feedback forms, all dated within the last 2 weeks, all painting me as an incompetent tyrant. The handwriting on several looked suspiciously similar. Richard moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Denver. "Effective immediately. Your employment with Blue Haven Dynamics is terminated. Security will escort you to clear your desk. You have 30 minutes. The next part happened in slow motion. Richard turned to face the open office floor, where I now realized dozens of my colleagues were pretending to work while obviously watching the glass-walled conference room. He raised his voice just enough to carry through the door. "This is what happens when mediocrity thinks it can hide behind false metrics and deflected blame. Emily Carter's consistent failures have held back her entire team. Let this be a lesson. Blue Haven Dynamics only retains excellence." My face burned. Through the glass, I saw my team members, people I'd mentored, protected, fought for, staring at their screens. Sarah, whom I'd recommended for promotion last month, actually turned her chair away. Only Tom, the quiet database administrator, met my eyes with what looked like genuine anguish. "This is wrongful termination," I managed, my voice shaking. "I want to see the actual data. I want to speak to—" "You want?" Richard laughed, a sharp sound like breaking glass. "You're no longer an employee here. What you want is irrelevant, Janet. Please ensure Ms. Carter understands the terms of her non-disclosure agreement. I'd hate for confusion to lead to legal complications. The threat was clear. Fight this, and they'd bury me in litigation I couldn't afford. The walk to my desk felt endless. A security guard, Kevin, who I'd chatted with every morning for 10 years, couldn't meet my eyes as he stood watch. I dumped personal items into a cardboard box. My coffee mug that said, "World's Okayest Boss." A Secret Santa gift from my team. A small cactus that had somehow survived despite my neglect. 3 framed certificates of excellence now worthless as the paper they were printed on. Whispers followed me like a wake. Did you hear? 70-hour weeks and still couldn't cut it. Richard says she was cooking the books. My hands shook as I unplugged my personal keyboard, the mechanical one I'd bought with my first bonus. Everything else belonged to the company. 10 years of code, documentation, innovation, all staying behind. As I waited for the elevator, Richard appeared one last time, close enough that only I could hear him. You were becoming too expensive, Emily. Your salary could pay for 2 eager graduates who won't question the new direction we're taking. Business is about evolution. You failed to evolve. The elevator doors closed on his smirk. Outside, the Denver afternoon sun felt surreal after the fluorescent tomb I'd just left. I sat in my car in the parking garage, box in the back seat, and finally let the tears come. Not just tears of sadness or anger, but of humiliation. He'd made a spectacle of me, turned my termination into a public execution. My phone buzzed with messages. Former colleagues expressing shock. A few offering support, but most just wanting gossip. I turned it off. The drive home was autopilot. My mind kept replaying Richard's words, looking for the lie in them, but knowing everyone else would take them as truth. In corporate America, the one who controls the narrative controls reality. My laptop sat on my kitchen counter where I'd left it this morning, back when I still had a career. The mortgage payment was due next week. My student loans didn't care that I'd just lost everything, but it was the injustice that burned hottest. Not just being fired, but being vilified, made into a cautionary tale for others. Richard Harlow had destroyed not just my job, but my reputation, my professional identity, everything I'd built. I poured a glass of wine I couldn't taste and stared at the Denver skyline where Blue Haven's tower stood like an accusation against the sky. Somewhere up there, Richard was probably already forgetting my name, moving on to his next victim. He'd made one mistake, though. He'd assumed I'd go quietly, too broken and afraid to fight back. He was wrong about that. 3 days passed in a blur of unanswered applications and ignored LinkedIn messages. Word travels fast in Denver's tech scene. I was radioactive. Then, Thursday evening, a knock at my door. Tom Brennan stood there, the database administrator from my team, looking over his shoulder like he was being followed. Emily, I'm sorry to just show up, but... He pulled a USB drive from his pocket, black and unmarked. You need to see this. Tom, I can't take company property. If Richard finds out, it's not company property. Not exactly. He pressed it into my hand. I've been backing up everything to a personal server. Started doing it 6 months ago when things got weird. Emily, the Morrison project metrics Richard showed you, they were altered 2 days before your termination. My heart stopped. What? Just look at it, please. But be careful. Use an air-gapped computer, something not connected to the internet. And Emily? He was already backing away. You didn't get this from me. He disappeared down the hallway before I could respond. I spent the next hour setting up an old laptop I'd kept for emergencies, completely offline. When I plugged in the USB, my hands were trembling. Folders within folders appeared. Emails, spreadsheets, internal communications dating back 2 years. The first file I opened was titled Morrison Metrics Original. The real numbers were there. We'd exceeded every target. Efficiency up 18%. Under budget by 15%. Client satisfaction scores in the 98th percentile. Then I opened Morrison Metrics but modified. Richard's version, every number twisted, every success inverted into failure. The modification timestamp, 3:47 a.m., 2 days before my termination. Modified by R. Harlow. But that was just the beginning. An email folder labeled Restructuring Confidential contained exchanges between Richard and the CFO, David Park. My blood ran cold as I read. Carter's team is the highest performing, but also highest cost. Average salary, $130K. New grads accepting $65K. Do the math. Agreed. But we need cause. Can't afford severance packages for 12 people. Leave that to me. Destroy the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter voluntarily. They'd planned it. Not just my termination, but using my destruction to terrorize my team into quitting. No severance, no unemployment benefits. Just fear. I dug deeper. More emails surfaced, these between Richard and someone identified only as MK International. The Morrison Code is exactly what we discussed. Once Carter's team is gone, we can offshore the entire division. Mumbai team ready to take over at 30% current cost. Ensure IP transfer is complete before final terminations. Cannot risk Carter taking knowledge with her. They were selling out the entire division, every innovation my team had created, every system we'd built, all being packaged for offshore transfer. But that wasn't even the worst part. A folder labeled Phantom Invoices made my stomach turn. Fake consulting companies, all registered to variations of Richard's relatives' names. Billing Blue Haven for millions in strategic advisory services. The money trail was complex but clear. Richard had been bleeding the company dry while positioning himself as its savior. One email thread with the subject line, Board Presentation, outlined his master plan. PIN Q3 losses on Enterprise Solutions Division. Carter's termination validates narrative. Stock dip creates buying opportunity for our consortium. After acquisition, golden parachutes activate. Estimated personal gain, $47 million. He wasn't just destroying careers, he was orchestrating a hostile takeover of his own company, using my team as the scapegoat for manufactured losses. My laptop screen blurred as tears of rage gathered, but then I found something that changed everything. Security footage, backup, video files, hundreds of them. But one stood out. Executive floor, Sept 15, 2 a.m., MP4. I clicked play. Grainy security footage showed Richard at someone's desk, my desk, at 2 a.m. on September 15th. He was at my computer, my personal login somehow active. He inserted a USB drive, typed rapidly, then removed it. The timestamp matched exactly with when several errors were allegedly introduced into the Morrison project code. Errors that had been attributed to me. He'd framed me, literally logged into my account, and sabotaged my own work. But the final folder was the one that made my hands shake. Previous mock terminations. 14 names. 14 team leads and senior developers terminated over the past 3 years, all following the same pattern. Public humiliation, destroyed reputations, forced exits. Several had left the industry entirely. One name I recognized, James Morrison. No relation to the Morrison Industries client, but a brilliant developer who'd supposedly had a nervous breakdown. His file contained emails showing Richard had gaslit him for months, altering his work and then blaming him for the changes. A note at the bottom of James's file, apparently added by Tom. James attempted suicide 6 months after termination. Survived. Now living with parents in Florida. Won't return calls. I sat back, the weight of it all crushing. This wasn't just about me. Richard Harlow was a predator, destroying lives for profit, driving people to the brink for percentage points. The USB contained enough evidence to destroy him, fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. But it was all illegally obtained. Any lawyer would tell me it was inadmissible, that I'd be the one prosecuted for corporate espionage. Unless... I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Martha Chen, no relation despite the shared surname with James, was a labor attorney I'd met at a conference 2 years ago. She'd given a presentation on whistleblower protections that I'd found fascinating at the time. Now it might be salvation. Martha? It's Emily Carter. I need your help. I've discovered something at Blue Haven, and I think there are more victims than just me. Her voice was immediately alert. Emily, before you say anything else, are you in a safe location? And do you have documentation? I looked at the USB drive, this small piece of plastic that contained enough explosives to bring down an empire. I have everything, I said. But Martha, he's dangerous. He's destroyed people. He might come after me if he finds out. Then we move carefully, she replied. But Emily, if what you're saying is true, we're not just talking about wrongful termination. We're talking about criminal conspiracy. Can you meet me tonight? As I agreed and hung up, I realized Tom had risked everything to give me this information. James Morrison had nearly died because of Richard's games. 14 careers destroyed. Families ruined. Lives shattered. Richard Harlow thought he'd broken me. Added me to his list of victims. He thought I'd disappear quietly like the others. He had no idea what he'd actually done. He'd given me purpose, and unlike him, I had nothing left to lose. Martha's office was in a converted Victorian house in Capitol Hill. Discreet and unassuming. We sat in her study until 2 a.m., reviewing every document, building a timeline, constructing something that could survive legal scrutiny. The security footage is gold, she said, adjusting her reading glasses. But we need corroboration. Richard will claim it's deep-faked, altered. We need witnesses. They're all terrified, I replied. Tom won't even admit he gave me this. What about the previous victims, the 14 who were terminated? That sparked something. If I could find them, convince even a few to come forward. Martha nodded. Class action, pattern of behavior. But Emily, this is bigger than wrongful termination. The FBI needs to see those phantom invoices. The SEC needs to know about the stock manipulation. But first, I said, we need inside allies. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a ghost. Using encrypted messaging apps and anonymous email accounts, I reached out to the 14 terminated employees. The responses were heartbreaking. Sarah Kim, terminated 2 years ago, responded first. I've been in therapy since it happened. He made me believe I was incompetent. I left tech entirely. I work at a garden center now. Marcus Rodriguez. Lost my house. My wife left. But I kept every email, every document. I knew someday someone would listen. One by one, they emerged from the shadows Richard had cast them into. 9 of the 14 agreed to join the lawsuit. We created a secure channel, sharing stories, comparing notes. The pattern was identical: gradual gaslighting, altered work, public humiliation, termination. But I needed more. I needed current employees. That's when Lisa Park from accounting reached out. Not through the encrypted channels, but directly to my personal email. Coffee, tomorrow? The place on 16th Street where you used to get those awful soy lattes? Lisa was taking a massive risk meeting me. Blue Haven had probably warned everyone against contact. She arrived wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, looking ridiculous but genuinely frightened. David Park is my uncle, she said without preamble. The CFO. I've been watching this happen for 3 years, too scared to say anything. But what they did to you. Emily. It's accelerating. 3 more terminations scheduled for next month. Your entire team. My coffee went cold. Tom? Especially Tom. Richard knows someone leaked information. He doesn't know who. But he's going scorched earth. Better to destroy them all than miss the mole. She slid a folder across the table. Uncle David doesn't know I have this. Board meeting minutes from last week. Richard presented your termination as proof of his dynamic leadership. The board approved his restructuring plan. The Mumbai transfer happens in 6 weeks. Why are you helping me? Lisa removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes red from crying. Because James Morrison was my friend. Because I've watched Richard destroy good people while I did nothing. Because Uncle David used to be a good man before Richard corrupted him. And because... She paused. Because Richard made a mistake. He promoted his nephew, Brett Harlow, to your position. Brett is 25, completely unqualified, and stupid enough to brag about his uncle's master plan at bars. She pulled out her phone, hit play on a voice recording. Brett's slurred voice filled the space between us. Uncle Rick says the whole tech industry is full of sheep. You just gotta scare them right. And they'll do whatever you want. That Carter bitch? He destroyed her in front of everyone. Made an example. Now they're all so scared. They're working twice as hard for half the recognition. Genius, right? Lisa, this is evidence. I've been recording him for weeks. He thinks I'm interested in him. She shuddered. The things he's admitted to. Richard's not just stealing from Blue Haven, he's got deals with competitors, selling our client lists, our proprietary code. My mind raced. We had financial fraud, conspiracy, corporate espionage. But Richard was smart. He'd covered his tracks, used intermediaries, kept his hands technically clean on paper. We need him to incriminate himself directly, I said. In front of witnesses he can't discredit or destroy. Lisa leaned forward. The quarterly all-hands meeting, 3 weeks, every employee, the entire board, and... She smiled for the first time. Financial press. Richard always invites reporters to showcase Blue Haven's transparency. He'll be presenting the Q3 reports, taking credit for the improved efficiency from the terminations. A plan began forming. Dangerous, possibly illegal, certainly career-ending if it failed. But I thought about James Morrison, about the 9 others ready to testify, about my team about to be destroyed. Lisa, how much access do you still have to the internal systems? Full access. Uncle David trusts me to run reports. And Brett? How much does he actually know about the technical infrastructure? Nothing. He can barely operate PowerPoint. I stood, energy coursing through me for the first time since my termination. Then here's what we're going to do. We're going to give Richard exactly what he wants. A public forum to brag about his accomplishments. Only this time, the presentation is going to include some slides he didn't prepare. Lisa's eyes widened. You want to hijack the quarterly meeting? Not hijack, enhance. With the truth. I pulled out a burner phone Martha had given me. But first, we need to ensure the press is especially interested in attending this quarter. As Lisa left, sliding back into her disguise, I texted the encrypted channel. Phase 1 complete, moving to Phase 2, everyone ready? 9 confirmations came back within minutes. I thought about Richard in his corner office, probably reviewing his presentation, practicing his lies. He thought he'd won, that I was broken, disappeared into the mass of destroyed careers he'd left in his wake. In 3 weeks, he'd learn otherwise. But between now and then, I had to stay invisible, coordinate 9 traumatized former employees, trust a terrified accountant, and somehow avoid whatever countermeasures Richard would deploy when he sensed danger. The chess game had begun. Richard held the board, the pieces, and the rules. But I had something he didn't expect, an army of the people he'd already destroyed, with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. The first sign of trouble came exactly 1 week before the quarterly meeting. Lisa sent a single word through our encrypted channel. Compromised. We met at Union Station, blending into the crowd of morning commuters. Her hands shook as she handed me a coffee. Richard knows something's coming, she whispered. He's hired a cybersecurity firm to audit all system access. They're tracking every login, every file accessed. Emily. They found my access logs to the financial records. My stomach dropped. Did they trace it to you specifically? Not yet, but it's only a matter of time. Uncle David asked me yesterday if I'd noticed anything unusual. The way he looked at me. She trailed off. You need to get out. Now. I can't. If I run, it confirms their suspicions. Besides, Brett is getting more careless. Last night he told me Richard has a kill switch, Some kind of insurance policy if anyone tries to expose him. Before I could respond, my burner phone buzzed. Marcus Rodriguez. They're following me. Black sedan. 2 days now. Then Sarah Kim. Someone called my employer asking questions about me, said they were doing a background check. Richard was hunting us. That evening, Martha called an emergency meeting at her office. Half our group showed up in person, the others connected via encrypted video. He's trying to intimidate you back into silence, Martha said. Classic suppression tactics. But it also means he's scared. He wouldn't be doing this if he didn't sense a threat. We should abort, James Morrison said through the video link, his voice thin with fear. You don't understand what he's capable of. The man had me convinced I was losing my mind. He'll destroy us all. He already has destroyed us, I replied. What more can he take? Our lives, James said quietly. I mean literally. A car accident. A mugging gone wrong. You think he'd hesitate? The room went silent. We'd all been thinking it, but James saying it out loud made it real. Tom Brennan, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke. I found something else in the system. Richard's been in contact with a private military contractor company, Blackwater-type outfit. The emails are vague, but they mention personnel problems and permanent solutions. My blood ran cold. We weren't just playing with careers anymore. We need protection, Martha said. I'm calling the FBI tomorrow. No, I said, surprising myself with the firmness. We do that now. Richard rabbits, destroys evidence, uses his connections to bury this. We need him at that meeting, confident, arrogant. We need him to hang himself publicly. Emily's right, Lisa said. But we need insurance of our own. That's when Tom smiled for the first time. I might have something. Richard's kill switch? I found it. It's a dead man switch. If anything happens to him, a packet of information gets released to every major news outlet. But here's the thing. It's all fabricated dirt on board members, investors, competitors, mutually assured destruction. He's been collecting blackmail material, real and manufactured, for years. How does that help us? Sarah asked. Because, Tom continued, I can mirror it. Create our own dead man switch. If anything happens to any of us, everything we have gets automatically released to the FBI, SEC, Wall Street Journal, everyone. That's illegal, Martha warned. So is what he's doing, I replied. Tom, do it. The next 3 days were hell. The black sedan following Marcus turned out to be a private investigator who got increasingly aggressive, approaching his children's school, photographing his home. Sarah's garden center employer received an anonymous tip that she'd been stealing, nearly getting her fired again. 2 members of our group dropped out, too frightened to continue. Then Brett made a mistake. Lisa recorded him at another bar, this time with a group of junior executives. Uncle Rick's got this whole thing wired. That quarterly meeting, he's announcing the Mumbai transition. But here's the kicker. He's already moved the IP. It's been in offshore servers for 2 weeks. Even if someone tried to stop it now, it's too late. The code, the clients, everything. Blue Haven is just a shell. He's selling the corpse to investors while he's already built the new company in India. Corporate theft on a massive scale. But more importantly, it meant Richard felt invulnerable. He'd already executed his plan. 48 hours before the meeting, disaster struck. Lisa's uncle confronted her directly. He knows. She sobbed over the phone. Not everything, but enough. He gave me a choice. Leave Denver tonight and never come back. Or he turns me over to Richard. Go, I said. Get out now. But the meeting. We'll manage, Lisa. You've done enough. Run. She did. But not before making one last access to the system. Downloading Richard's presentation for the quarterly meeting and sending it to me. Looking at his slides, I felt sick. He was planning to announce my team's termination as a triumph, complete with fabricated metrics showing massive gains from my firing. He'd turned our destruction into a PowerPoint victory lap. Tom worked through the night, preparing our counterstrike. I can't hack the presentation system, he said, exhausted. They've locked it down too tight. But the overflow monitors in the lobby, the ones that mirror the main presentation, those run on an older system. I can access those. It wasn't perfect. Only part of the audience would see our evidence. But it was something. 24 hours before the meeting. Martha made a final attempt. Emily, let me call the FBI now. We have enough. No, I need to see his face when it happens. I need everyone to see who he really is. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every car passing my apartment made me jump. Every footstep in the hallway sent my heart racing. I'd emailed goodbye letters to my family, just in case James was right about Richard's willingness to create accidents. My phone buzzed at 3 a.m. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Emily. The voice was unfamiliar. You don't know me, but I work security at Blue Haven. Kevin asked me to call you. Richard's hired extra security for tomorrow. Off-the-books types. Military contractors. They have your photo. All of your photos. If any of you try to enter the building. The line went dead. Richard knew we were coming. He was ready for us. The meeting was in 18 hours, and we were walking into a trap. But backing down now meant he won. It meant the 14 destroyed careers meant nothing. It meant my team would be next. I opened the encrypted channel. He knows. Security will be looking for us. Anyone who wants out, now's the time. One by one, responses came back. Marcus. I'm in. Sarah. Let's end this. James. Fuck it, I'm flying in tonight. Tom. The overflow system is ready. 7 others confirmed. We were really going to do this. Walk into Richard's fortress, past his private military contractors, and destroy him in front of everyone. Or he was going to destroy us. Permanently. The morning of the quarterly meeting arrived gray and drizzling, fitting weather for what was about to unfold. I stood across the street from Blue Haven's tower at 7 a.m., watching employees stream in. The extra security was obvious, men in black suits with earpieces, studying every face. Tom's voice crackled through my earpiece. Overflow system is live. I'm in position at the coffee shop. I can see the lobby monitors. Martha was stationed at the FBI field office, ready to file our complaint the moment the presentation began. The rest of our group was scattered around downtown, waiting. At 8:45, 15 minutes before the meeting, I watched Richard's Tesla pull into the executive parking garage. He emerged looking like he'd already won. Perfectly tailored suit, confident stride, that smirk I'd grown to despise. Target acquired, Marcus said through the earpiece. He was positioned in the building across the street with a telephoto lens, documenting everything. The plan was simple. We couldn't get into the main auditorium, but Tom would hijack the overflow monitors in the lobby where another 100 employees and several journalists would be watching. The moment Richard began his presentation about the successful restructuring, our evidence would appear on those screens instead. 9 a.m. The meeting began. Through the glass lobby, I could see employees gathering around the overflow monitors. Richard's face appeared on screen, that practiced executive smile in place. Good morning, Blue Haven family. His voice echoed through the speakers. Today marks a triumphant quarter for our company, proving that decisive leadership and willingness to cut dead weight produces exceptional results. Dead weight. That's what 10 years of my life had been reduced to. Now. Tom, I whispered. 30 seconds, he replied. The system's fighting me. Richard continued. The termination of Emily Carter and the restructuring of the Enterprise Solutions Division has resulted in a 40% increase in efficiency. My hands clenched, the fabricated numbers presented as gospel. Got it, Tom said. The overflow monitors flickered. Richard's face disappeared, replaced by the first email. Destroy the shepherd, and the sheep will scatter voluntarily. The lobby erupted in confusion. People pressed closer to the monitors as email after email appeared, the phantom invoices, the offshore conspiracy, the stock manipulation scheme. Each document stayed on screen just long enough to read, to photograph, to comprehend. Richard's voice continued from the main auditorium, unaware. Our Mumbai transition will reduce costs by 70% while maintaining quality. But in the lobby, his security footage appeared on screen. There he was at 2 a.m., at my computer, sabotaging my work. The timestamp. His face clearly visible. "Security's moving," Marcus warned. "They're trying to get to the server room." 60 more seconds, Tom said. "The best part's coming." Brett's drunken confession began playing, his slurred voice filling the lobby. "Uncle Rick says the whole tech industry is full of sheep. That Carter bitch? He destroyed her in front of everyone." Journalists were frantically taking notes, recording everything on their phones. Employees stood frozen, watching their CEO's empire crumble in real time. Then came the kill shot, Richard's own voice from a recorded phone call Tom had uncovered. "The board's too stupid to notice. By the time they figure out the company's been gutted, I'll be in the Caymans with 50 million. Let them try to extradite me." The lobby monitors suddenly went black. Security had found the connection, but it was too late. "FBI's on their way," Martha said through the earpiece. "I've filed everything." Through the glass, I watched chaos unfold. The journalists rushed toward the auditorium. Employees were shouting, pointing at their phones where they'd captured the evidence. The board members who'd been watching from the lobby stood pale-faced, shell-shocked. Then the auditorium doors burst open. Richard emerged, his face purple with rage, screaming at his security team. His eyes swept the street and found me standing across from the building. For a moment, we just stared at each other through the rain and glass. I saw recognition dawn on his face, followed by pure hatred. He started toward the doors, his security team flanking him, but then stopped. Behind him, Denver police officers were entering the building, followed by what looked like federal agents in FBI windbreakers. David Park, the CFO, was already in handcuffs. Richard turned back to look at me one more time. I couldn't hear him through the glass, but I could read his lips. "You're dead." His security team grabbed his arms, not to protect him, but to stop him as more officers approached. I watched them read him his rights, watched them turn him around, watched them click the handcuffs into place. The mighty Richard Harlow, who'd destroyed 14 careers, who'd driven James Morrison to attempt suicide, who'd planned to gut an entire company for personal gain, arrested in his own lobby while his employees watched. But the sweetest moment came when they led him past the overflow monitors. Tom had managed one last hack. On every screen was a simple message. For James Morrison, for Sarah Kim, for Marcus Rodriguez, for all the others, for Emily Carter. Justice. Richard's legs seemed to give out. His security team had to practically carry him to the police car. My phone rang, an unknown number. "Ms. Carter, this is Agent Patricia Wells with the FBI. We need you to come in for a statement. Can you come to the federal building?" "I'll be right there," I said, still watching the police car pull away with Richard in the back. Tom's voice came through the earpiece. "Emily, check the news sites." I pulled up the Denver Post on my phone. The headline was already live. "Breaking Blue Haven CEO arrested in massive fraud scheme following employee whistleblower revelations." Below it, another headline. 14 former employees come forward with pattern of abuse at tech giant. Sarah's voice joined the channel. "We did it. We actually did it." "It's not over," Martha warned. "There'll be trials, depositions. Richard has resources for the best lawyers." She was right. But as I watched Blue Haven employees streaming out of the building, some crying, others celebrating, many just looking stunned, I knew we'd won the only battle that really mattered. We'd shown them all who Richard Harlow really was. We'd stripped away his mask in front of everyone who'd believed his lies. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I expected another threat, but instead found, "Thank you." A current employee who's been waiting 3 years for someone brave enough to stand up to him. Then another. "You saved us. The whole team." And another. "I knew you didn't do those things," he said. "Thank you for fighting back." By the time I reached the federal building, I had 47 messages from current and former Blue Haven employees. Some offered support, others shared their own stories of Richard's abuse, and many simply said what I'd needed to hear for weeks. We believe you. As I walked up the federal building steps, ready to give my statement and ensure Richard never destroyed another career, I felt something I hadn't experienced since that horrible day in the conference room. I felt whole again. The FBI interview lasted 6 hours. Agent Wells and her partner, Agent Brooks, were thorough but sympathetic, especially when I showed them the suicide attempt documentation for James Morrison. This goes deeper than we initially thought, Wells said, studying the phantom invoices. This isn't just employment fraud. We're looking at RICO charges, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit securities fraud. But Richard wasn't done fighting. 3 days after his arrest, his legal team, a squadron of Harvard law graduates from Denver's most expensive firm, got him released on $5 million bail. The conditions were strict: ankle monitor, passport surrender, no contact with witnesses, but he was free. That's when things escalated. Tom called me at midnight. Panicked. "Emily, they're in my apartment. They were. My neighbors saw men in suits leaving. Nothing's missing, but everything's been searched." Sarah reported the same. Marcus found his car tires slashed. James received a package with no return address. Inside was a photo of him from his hospital stay after his suicide attempt, with "Round 2" written in red marker. Richard was sending a message. The legal system might have him, but he still had reach. Martha immediately filed for protective orders, but the judge needed proof Richard was behind the intimidation. His lawyers claimed it was unfortunate coincidence and public backlash. Then came the meeting that changed everything. A week after Richard's release, I received a call from someone claiming to be Richard's attorney, requesting a private meeting. Against Martha's advice, I agreed, but only in her office with her present. The man who showed up wasn't what I expected. Michael Steinberg was young, maybe 35, and looked uncomfortable. "I'm here unofficially," he began, glancing nervously at Martha's recording device. "Please, turn that off. What I'm about to say could end my career." Martha and I exchanged glances. She turned off the recorder. "Richard Harlow is planning to flee the country," Steinberg said quickly. "The ankle monitor means nothing. He has contacts who can remove it and get him on a private jet within hours. But that's not why I'm here." He pulled out a tablet, showing bank records. "He's liquidating everything, moving money offshore. But more importantly, he's put a bounty on you, Ms. Carter. $50,000 to anyone who can permanently silence you before the trial." My blood went cold. "Why are you telling me this?" Martha demanded. "Because I became a lawyer to pursue justice, not to help monsters escape it." Steinberg's hands shook. "My sister was bullied out of her tech job 5 years ago. Different company, same tactics. She never recovered. When I saw what Richard did to you, to all of you, I can't be part of this." He slid a flash drive across the table. "Richard's real books, not the ones he's showing the FBI. These detail every bribe, every threat, every crime for the past 5 years, including 3 accidents that weren't accidents at all. Former employees who died under suspicious circumstances after threatening to expose him. Murder. Richard wasn't just a corporate criminal. He was a killer." "There's more," Steinberg continued. "Tomorrow at 3 p.m., Richard's meeting with a man named Victor Kozlov, former FSB, now freelance problem solver. The meeting's at Richard's home office. He's planning to pay Victor to handle his witness problem before fleeing to a non-extradition country." "We need to tell the FBI immediately," Martha said. "With what proof?" Steinberg asked. "By the time they get a warrant, Richard will be gone. The meeting will be over. But," he hesitated, "Richard's home security system has a flaw. He never changed the default admin password from the installation. I know because I reviewed the contract. If someone were to access it remotely, they could record everything." He stood to leave, then paused. "I was never here. That flash drive came from an anonymous source. And Ms. Carter? After tomorrow. Please be very careful. Victor Kozlov doesn't leave witnesses. After he left, Martha and I sat in stunned silence. "This is insane," she finally said. "We're talking about recording a potential murder conspiracy without a warrant." "We're talking about staying alive," I corrected. Tom was the one who figured out the security system. Within 2 hours, he had access to every camera and microphone in Richard's home. We set up in Martha's conference room with FBI agent Wells, who'd agreed to witness everything unofficially until we had enough for an emergency warrant. At 3 p.m. the next day, we watched Victor Kozlov arrive. 6'4", dead eyes, wearing an expensive suit that didn't quite hide the gun under his jacket. Richard greeted him in his office, all pretense of the polished CEO gone. He looked haggard, desperate. "I need them eliminated," Richard said without preamble. "All of them, but especially Carter. Make it look random. Accidents, muggings, whatever. I don't care." 15 people? Victor's accent was thick. "That will be expensive and suspicious." 5 million. Cash. Start with Carter and Morrison. The rest will get the message. Victor smiled, a cold expression that made my skin crawl. "For 5 million, I'll make them disappear completely. No bodies, no evidence." "Perfect. How soon?" That's when Agent Wells made the call. "We have enough. Emergency warrant, now." Within minutes, FBI SWAT units surrounded Richard's house. We watched on the security feed as they breached the doors. Richard's face went from confusion to rage to absolute terror as he realized what was happening. Victor tried to run but was tackled in the hallway. The briefcase of cash Richard had ready spilled across his marble floor, the same floor where he'd probably planned my death. This time, there would be no bail. Conspiracy to commit murder, attempting to flee prosecution, witness tampering. Richard Harlow was going away for life. But the best moment came when Agent Wells called me directly from Richard's office. "Ms. Carter, I'm standing here with Mr. Harlow. He'd like to know how we knew about the meeting." I could hear Richard screaming in the background. "It was her, that bitch. She hacked my system. This is entrapment." "Tell him," I said calmly, "that he should have changed his default passwords. And Richard, this is for James Morrison." The screaming intensified before cutting off. They'd dragged him away. Later that evening, as I sat with Martha reviewing the prosecution's case, she asked, "Do you think Steinberg will be okay?" "He's already resigned from Richard's firm," I replied, starting his own practice focusing on wrongful termination cases. I might be his first client for my civil suit. She smiled. "Richard's going to lose everything. The company, his freedom, his fortune. You won." I thought about the 14 destroyed careers, about James's suicide attempt, about my team still facing termination despite Richard's arrest. "No," I said, "surviving isn't winning. Making sure this never happens again. That would be winning." But for now, as I watched the news coverage of Richard Harlow being escorted into federal prison without bail, charged with conspiracy to commit murder among dozens of other charges, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. The man who'd tried to destroy me, who'd haunted my nightmares, who'd wielded power like a weapon, he was done. Permanently. The federal courthouse in downtown Denver had never seen media coverage like this. Every major news outlet, tech blogs, business journals, all gathered to witness the final chapter of Richard Harlow's empire. The trial had lasted 3 weeks. Witness after witness took the stand. James Morrison flew in from Florida, his voice steady as he described the gaslighting that nearly killed him. Sarah Kim detailed the systematic destruction of her confidence. Marcus Rodriguez presented evidence of Richard's financial manipulations with the precision of a seasoned analyst. When my turn came, I simply told the truth. 10 years of dedication reduced to a public execution. The fabricated metrics. The security footage of Richard sabotaging my work at 2 a.m. Richard's lawyers tried everything, claiming entrapment, questioning the evidence's authenticity, even suggesting I'd orchestrated everything for revenge. But the prosecution had Victor Kozlov's testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence. The Russians' cold recitation of Richard's murder-for-hire proposal silenced the courtroom. The jury deliberated for exactly 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. 47 charges including conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, embezzlement, racketeering, and securities fraud. The judge sentenced Richard to 97 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. As they led him away, Richard turned to look at me one last time. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen in his eyes before: defeat, complete and total defeat. Outside the courthouse, the October sun felt warm on my face. The same reporters who'd once written about my incompetence now wanted my story. I gave one brief statement. This isn't about revenge, it's about justice. For 14 careers destroyed, for James Morrison and everyone else Richard Harlow pushed to the brink. No one should have that kind of power over other people's lives. Blue Haven Dynamics folded within a month. The board of directors, facing their own criminal investigations, couldn't salvage the company's reputation. But from its ashes, something unexpected emerged. Tom Brennan and 5 other developers from my old team started their own company, Phoenix Tech Solutions. They offered me a position as Chief Operations Officer. I declined. Michael Steinberg's new law firm had offered me something more interesting, heading up a division specifically focused on protecting whistleblowers and prosecuting corporate abuse. My first case was helping the other Blue Haven employees recover their stolen wages and damaged careers. 6 months later, I received an unexpected call. "Emily, this is James Morrison." His voice sounded different, stronger. "I wanted to thank you," he continued. "Not just for the justice, but for showing me I wasn't crazy, I wasn't weak, I was targeted by a predator. I'm back in tech now, working for a startup in Miami. It's small, but the people are good. Real good." "James, you don't need to thank." "Yes, I do. You stood up when the rest of us couldn't. You saved lives, Emily. Mine included." After we hung up, I stood in my new office, simple, nothing like the corporate towers I'd once inhabited, and looked at the framed photo on my desk. It was from the day after Richard's sentencing, 14 of us, survivors of his reign of terror, standing together outside the courthouse. We weren't smiling. This wasn't that kind of victory. But we were standing. We were alive. We were free. Lisa Park had sent it from Seattle, where she'd started over with a clean slate. Her uncle David was serving 5 years minimum security. But he testified against Richard, showing some remnant of conscience. She'd forgiven him, though they'd never be family again. My phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Another message from a young developer at a different company. "My CEO is doing exactly what Richard did to you. Can you help?" This was my life now. Not coding, not climbing corporate ladders, but making sure no other Richard Harlows could destroy people with impunity. I thought about that morning 3 years ago when I'd sat in my car, fired and humiliated, believing my life was over. If someone had told me that devastation would lead to this, to putting a monster behind bars, to saving others from the same fate, to finding a purpose beyond any job title, I wouldn't have believed them. Richard had been right about one thing. I had failed to evolve. I'd failed to evolve into someone who could ignore corruption, who could watch others suffer in silence, who could prioritize a paycheck over principles. That failure was my greatest success. As the Denver sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold, I closed my laptop and prepared to head home. Not to an empty apartment haunted by corporate anxiety, but to a life I'd built from the ashes of the one Richard had burned. Tomorrow, there would be new cases, new predators to stop, new victims to protect. But tonight, I'd simply exist in the freedom Richard had tried to steal, the freedom to live without fear, to work with purpose, and to know that sometimes, against all odds, justice actually wins. The security guard at my building, Kevin, who'd found a job here after Blue Haven's collapse, nodded as I passed. "Have a good evening, Miss Carter." "You too, Kevin." I stepped out into the Denver evening, the city lights beginning to twinkle against the darkening sky, somewhere in a federal prison cell. Richard Harlow was counting the first days of his 97-year sentence, and I was finally, truly free. Thank you for listening to this story of justice and resilience. If you're listening to this, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and share your thoughts about Emily's journey. What would you have done in her situation? Your stories and perspectives make this community special. Until next time. Remember, sometimes the biggest victories come from the darkest moments.